Yeah, thanks so much for having me, and thank you all for coming to hear me talk. I haven't done this much before, so apologies if I'm like a little bit nervous and stumble over words in advance, but yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
So can I just say one thing? If
yeah.
anyone has any trouble hearing any of the speakers sing out, because we do have a PA system, we can mic them up if you wish.
Yeah, am I loud enough for everybody? Is it all right? Okay, cool. Yeah, so like Phil mentioned, I'm from Patchwork Urban Farm. We started back in June of 2021. And like, I guess, yeah, in a nutshell, we basically use the backyards of around 5 different people, different households that share those backyards, front yards and verges with us. And then we grow lots and lots of different types of vegetables and supply households with a veggie box every week. And I guess like Canberra, the climate is pretty different. We have frost in winter that's pretty heavy. So we only try and do it from like November through to May. So we're just doing a 30-week season. And yeah, I guess some of the vegetables that we grow, you might be able to see in this photo, like we try and have like as much diversity in the veggie box as possible for our members to enjoy. And so yeah, there's like tomatoes, zucchini, cucumbers, corn, beans, beetroot, carrots, squash, kale, silver beet, salad mix, lettuce heads, spring onions, garlic. Yeah, quite a few. I'll probably mention some more later as well. So yeah, this is kind of like a who we are introduction. We started as 5 people, and yeah, there's me, I guess, in that photo, and like my experience through the food cooperative in Canberra was like really helpful. We all had like a experience in backyard gardening, and that was kind of like the extent of it. Like some of us had maybe done a little bit of woofing here and there on other market gardens, but nothing serious like working for a full season. It was mostly just like our own backyards that we were experimenting in. And yeah, like when COVID happened in Canberra, there was a lockdown for at least a month, and probably, yeah, and then like, anyway, like that was kind of a time that we came together and were thinking like, do we want to change what we're doing with food supply? A lot of people would go into supermarkets and there wouldn't be enough food on the shelves, and everyone really liked being outside. So we were like, maybe this is the time that we can get really serious about yeah, growing food not only for ourselves but for other people in the community. So yeah, we decided to give it a go. And like I had some experience from the food co-op that was really useful, because I'd been I guess around food systems for like 7 or 8 years, and from that like retail perspective where we would try and get local farmers in, but then we would also be getting in some bigger wholesalers, and I would also just be working with people a lot. It was a really dynamic environment, and we had like volunteers involved in lots of different ways, and so I think I learned a lot there. And then Christina, who's in the middle in the red jacket there, she was working at Mulch, a community garden that people with disabilities also worked at. And so she, I guess, had been like, yeah, growing food with those participants for at least 8 years, and really wanted to just grow food more as like the main thing. And yeah, Kim on the bottom right there, I knew her through the food co-op, and she was really interested in like the medicinal uses of plants, and yeah, really thoughtful person. And then Claire was involved, she's the top right, she was involved at the Oishi canteen, which is just like a school canteen, and they really focus on using fresh veg. So that's kind of her experience. And then Mikey also was like, yeah, helping in the garden where we both live, and yeah, had experience with the food co-op and the housing co-op and some other interesting places. So yeah, we kind of, I knew everyone the most. Like some people didn't know each other, like Claire and Christina didn't know each other, Kim and Mikey didn't really know each other, but I knew everyone and kind of just was like, you're all interested in doing this thing, do you want to do it with me? And they all said yes, so that's kind of our beginnings there. And yeah, I guess the question of why we do it is really important. I think actually enjoying the work of growing food is like an essential thing. It's not just like the idea of it, but also just like being outside a lot, being able to work with plants a lot, being able to observe things over a long amount of time and learn from like each little bit of information that you get over a season of what a crop likes or doesn't like. Yeah, and then I guess like climate resilience was also something that we all, I guess, like grew up with, like this kind of impending sense of like doom almost, of like, okay, carbon, like, yeah, we're using fossil fuels more than we're able to at a sustainable rate, and we've got to, I guess, address this. And yeah, thinking about the food production aspect of that was something that we all felt inspired with. And then, yeah, connecting community. We, also, I guess, like part of that thing with the doom of climate change or whatever. I don't know if this is too heavy for everybody, but it's just an important part of our decision-making process. Was just that we felt like we needed to do something, and individually in our own lives we could only do so much. We could only like recycle things so much or not use things in plastic or whatever. And then I guess like in Canberra, we're right next to Parliament House, and sometimes we'd go to a rally there or a protest and say like, no more fossil fuels, and it will just feel like a bit futile because you're like one of 100 people there and it feels like they don't listen. So this kind of middle ground of community was what felt really powerful for us as like a place that we could have an impact and also just like make connections with people around us and like live a happier life because of it and do something really meaningful in that kind of space. Yeah. So yeah, as well as kind of making that decision together, we also did a lot of research. These are some of the people that we read their books of or listened to the podcasts of. Like Curtis Stone talks a lot about urban farming in Canada. J.M. Fortier talks about how to make a small market garden really successful financially, but still using pretty good methods. And then Australian Food Sovereignty Alliance was an organisation that I'd met through the food co-op, and they're just extremely supportive of farmers. And like, if you have an issue with like the council or some regulation going on, they're often able to like reach out to other farmers and like bring together submissions and also organise like annual conferences where people can come together and chat. And yeah, they're a great organisation. And then the No-Till Market Garden podcast was also really useful because yeah, we'd done backyard gardening. We hadn't thought about commercial gardening. We didn't know if we were interested in like organic or no-till or whatever. And yeah, this podcast was really great, just interviewing lots of different people who are already doing it and learning from their mistakes rather than making them and learning from them that way. So yeah, after some of that research, we decided that we were ready to look for land. Sorry, I'll speak louder.
Is it possible for you to use a microphone? I apologise.
Yes, sure, yes. Thanks for saying it now, we're not that far in. Oh no, anyway, I'm not very good at speaking loud as well. So.
Very good.
Hello.
Yes. The mum voice, isn't it? I don't have a good voice. Like if you've got to raise your voice, it's better than
Yeah, so after researching, we decided to look for land. And the way that we did that was basically we put together like a little infographic, just like a picture of, I can't remember exactly, like some vegetables, and we said like, we're looking for land, it has to be above 60 square metres and have good access and have good sunlight, and we have to know that we can stay there for 5 years. And we just put that out, like we created a Facebook page and we created an Instagram page, and then we just invited all of our friends to like it, and then we just put it on there, and we had a lot of people contact us in the first like 24 hours. I think we had like maybe like 10 or 15 people contact us, which was way more than we were expecting and way more than we knew how to use. So yeah, that was very exciting, and we went and looked at all of these different spaces and basically chose the ones that we thought would work best. and also tried to make them close together so we wouldn't have to drive too far between each plot to get there. And then we started setting up. So this was like a major learning curve for us. We initially did a no-dig garden, and then we switched to a method of like mixing in the compost rather than doing a 10 centimetre layer. And I took photos of all the process, so I'll just go through that here so you get to know each one a bit. Oh, thank you. Is this good? Is this better? Okay, great. So yeah, the first step of what we called low or no dig, because there is a bit of digging at the start. The first step of it was just going through the lawn and removing any noxious weeds. And then we would broad fork the whole area. So the broad fork is in this photo. It's kind of like a massive pitchfork, and you use your whole body to really lever up the ground and aerate it and everything. And then we would do like a pH test and make sure it was as close to neutral as we could make it, so adding some lime or gypsum. We had some access for alpaca manure, so we would also add that. And then the next step was getting a whole bunch of cardboard, which was really easy to find in Canberra, and just laying it down over the whole area. And then we would put a 10 centimetre layer of compost on top of that cardboard. And
quick question.
Yeah.
What's the purpose for the cardboard, please?
So that was because it's like you don't have to dig up the grass. We thought it would be less work. And then it's like, yeah, it's meant to be easy to install, and then like that 10 centimetre layer of compost is like a lot of nutrition for the plants, and it's meant to be a really good medium for them to grow in. And then over like the next couple of weeks, that compost will, just decompose, and worms will travel through, and it'll be as if it weren't there. So, yeah. We were setting up the beds with the cardboard and compost layers. We'd have like a mulch pathway in between each bed. We used like a standard market gardening size so that each bed was 75 centimetres wide, and then each pathway is 25 centimetres wide, and that was just like a really good way because it adds up to a metre. It was like easy to calculate, and also made like really good use of the space. Which, when you're trying to grow in like a small area, every bit of like actual growing soil really counts. And then this is like the learning curve part of it was, okay, you're ready to grow at that point, and we put in a lot of seedlings into this compost, and then we kind of found out that the compost that we got it from two different suppliers, and both suppliers had issues. One had herbicide contamination, and even though these are both like the best compost suppliers in Canberra, it just didn't really work for this method. One because of herbicide contamination, and one because it was just way too alkaline. And in both cases we just had to we were just kind of like watching these plants getting stunted and starting to die, and it was like really stressful because we were like, oh, we're telling people that our veggies are going to be ready in 6 weeks and they're definitely not. So we had, like the La Nina weather in Canberra was really rainy. We had like a full week where we were just like lifting all of these little seedlings out of the ground and like leaving them on the side of the bed, and then digging that 10 centimetre layer into the bottom 30 centimetres of existing soil, removing a whole bunch of couch grass at the same time. I don't know if people have couch grass here, but it's like a rhizomic grass that just spreads really easily. And then once that soil had been mixed through, it was kind of like we diluted it, and like the alkaline levels and the herbicide levels weren't as serious when they were mixed all through like that. So then we put the plants back in and they were able to grow. So it was just a huge amount of work, and we decided not to do that again, even though we pulled through. This is the method that we switched to for the other plots that we were setting up in the season. And you can kind of see in the photo, like this is what a lot of the plots would look like. It would just be like kind of an overgrown area. Sometimes would have like stakes from an existing veggie patch in there, or like sometimes like some small bushes that we would remove. We would just like clear the area as a first step. And then we would use a tarp if there's any couch grass or weeds. We kind of, at this point in time we had like it was setting up for our second season, not our first season. So we had a bit more time where we could actually plan the setup, and using a tarp meant that we could just leave it on there for like 6 weeks and all of those weeds would die off, all of that grass wouldn't get enough sunlight, and then it was like really easy to come back through and just pull it up. And the tarps we were able to get because, yeah, it was pretty convenient. Mikey works at the Canberra Theatre as a side job, and they often have like these huge banners that display like what theatre show is happening that week or month or whatever. And so once they're done with it, they don't have any use for it, and so we just asked to have it, and it's just like a really heavy duty canvas. Yeah, so we'd also be adding some alpaca manure. Yeah, I think we did that before we tarped actually. Yeah. And this particular plot didn't have many weeds or couch grass, so we were able to do this without tarping. And so we were just like pulling the grass out by hand, and it was like really loose because it had been an existing veggie patch, and it worked pretty well. So yeah, clearing the grass, then shaping the beds, that standard length that I talked about. Yeah, I think we had like 15 people turn up to this working bee. It was like, it's a nice time. We just put on a big lunch for everyone, and a lot of people come and enjoy being in the outdoors and doing some gardening, because I think a lot of people mean to do it but then don't quite get into it, and then when they're helping a friend it feels really good and kind of like a low commitment way of doing it. Yeah, so after shaping those beds we put down a 2 centimetre compost layer, so and we would kind of like rake that through the top of the soil as well. So and this compost we actually produced ourselves, so we knew it didn't have any herbicides in it, and we'd been able to do a pH test before and make sure it wasn't too alkaline, so that was also a great feeling. And then we sowed a green manure in it. Sometimes people call them cover crops. I think, yeah, it's the same thing. And so that just was to make sure, I guess, that I guess one of the principles of what we do is try to make sure there's always something living in the soil, because that really helps the soil maintain its structure and, yeah, I guess like assist the nutrients to go to the other plants around it, and I guess protects the soil from the carbon from coming out of the soil when the sun hits it. Yeah.
What cover crop did you use?
We used a mix of peas, lupin and vetch, and actually some mustard as well. Yeah. Yeah, question over here.
Put in your compost.
Sorry?
What do you put in your compost?
Okay, so our compost, maybe I'll get to that a little bit later because I'll talk about it more, if that's all right? Okay. Yeah, and so once that green manure has grown up, we would basically tarp it for around a week, and you can kind of see in this photo there's some black plastic. That's kind of like a folded up piece, but you can get pretty big pieces, so you can just tarp a really big area at once, and that will just kill off the green manure. You don't need to dig up anything. You don't need to use a mattock or a hoe or whatever to kill the plant. You can just tarp it, and that, like, because it gets so hot underneath it, that will make it dry out. And then, yeah, depending on what we were planting, we would either remove it, like remove the top layer of the green manure, or we would just kind of like shape it so that it becomes a mulch. Like in the case where we were planting tomatoes, we would just shape this green manure that's dried off to be the mulch around the tomatoes. But if we were planting carrots, we'd just remove the whole. It kind of comes off like a sheet. It's good. Yeah, and so I guess we put a lot of emphasis on trying to maintain healthy soil, because that is like really the foundation of growing anything in it, is that soil being healthy. And so some of the ways that we do that are by making it agri-chemical free, very low soil disturbance, and then also planting things really densely and interplanting different types of vegetables together.
Quick one.
Yeah.
So that, once you remove the tarp, which you put over the green manure cover crop, then there's sort of enough dead material there to put around your seedlings to stop the sun reaching the soil?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
don't need to add it, didn't find you needed to bring in anything else?
I mean,
Or anything like that?
because the summer in Canberra isn't going to be a very hot one this year, I think that the green manure will suffice, but in like a really... Sorry?
There's quite a bit of material.
Yeah, I mean, you can let the green manure grow pretty tall. Like, yeah, some people would tarp it when it's younger, but we let ours go pretty tall. Yeah, and like the summers are only getting up to like 30 degrees for a few days at them. Like that's what it's been like the last 2 years and likely to be for this third year as well. Whereas a normal summer in Canberra, it gets up to 40 degrees for like a week straight, and there are lots of days over 30. So having more mulch for those kind of summers would be needed, yeah.
How do you decide when you put the tarp over the green manure? Is it when it starts to flower or seed or?
Yeah, I guess we've been experimenting a little bit and haven't, like, we've been, doing some when they're younger and some when they're taller.
You
Yeah.
probably want to do it before seeding.
Sorry?
It'd get hot enough to kill the seeds.
Yeah, even when it had grown tall, I don't think it was ready to seed. So yeah, it would be before seeding. Yeah. Yeah, so in terms of like not using industrial chemicals, I guess we use insect netting for pest control, as well as, trying to plant different flowers, as well as like plant different species with each other so that they don't have as much pressure for pests. We try to have flowers on every plot because we know that those bring in some good bugs. And yeah, the insect netting is basically for brassicas because the white cabbage moth can just come along way faster than we can attract beneficial bugs at this point. Hopefully that's something we can change in the future, but that's what we're doing at the moment. If we want to feed our plants, we'll just use some worm juice from like a worm farm that we have, or we'll make a compost fertiliser by just diluting some compost in some water with like a 10:1 ratio. I guess the use of green manures and compost also means that we don't need to use other chemicals. The low soil disturbance, I guess we try and do only the setup having some soil disturbance, and after we've like got rid of those weeds or aerated the soil for the first time, we'll try to not do that again. When we're changing over crops, we'll try and cut off the plants so that their roots stay in the soil and break down, using the tarp. And I guess that lets the soil develop and maintain its natural structure. It increases the organic matter in the soil, which adds to the water retention, which is something that in Canberra is really important. And then interplanting and dense planting. So in some of these photos, you can maybe see like we've got some onions and some beetroot growing together. There's some basil and some tomatoes and tomatillos. And then we do like the classic three sisters of corn, beans and squash. And I guess we wouldn't really choose to grow corn otherwise, but because the beans like just make such good use of it as a structure to climb up, and the squash can like really weave like in between, it kind of makes it worthwhile growing corn, whereas otherwise it would just take a really long time for a few cobs. Doing this kind of thing, it makes use of like all the space. Like some things can grow low to the ground, like the basil, and the tomatoes can grow up, and it still keeps the soil protected from the sun. And I don't know a lot about what plants do underneath the soil, but it seems like they're kind of friends, and some people have what another plant doesn't have, and so they're kind of just like having a little trade underneath the ground. So I guess more diversity equals more resilience. In lots of different ways, whether that's like sharing nutrients, or if like one thing gets particularly affected by, I don't know, a flood, like it really doesn't like wet weather so much, another thing might be able to survive in that same space. So everything that we grow either from seeding or like raising our own seedlings. And we have this table that we just like made it out of a big piece of plywood and then we bought like a little coil that heats up the sand that you can put into the table. And then, yeah, it's kind of like a way to get an early start on a lot of the summer vegetables by having like this heated table. But then it also, I guess, doubles as a greenhouse. So we raise pretty much everything for our season in there. And then, yeah, we try and save seeds as much as we can. It seems like on our scale it works pretty well because you can leave one carrot to go to seed in like a row of 10 metres, and then you don't need to buy carrot seeds again the following year. And yeah, like the Canberra Seed Savers, which is something that Rebecca was involved in Canberra and maybe still is also a really great resource for us because there are other people in the neighbourhood that are growing things, and it means that those seeds are like really way more adapted to the Canberra climate. So we way prefer to, use those kinds of seeds rather than getting them from somewhere way up the coast. Okay, so this is more about how we sell our produce now. We decided to use this model of distribution called CSA. It stands for Community Supported Agriculture. And it's basically a subscription model. So similar to getting a newspaper every week, you like pay for the subscription, you know you're going to get a newspaper, but you don't know exactly what's going to be in it. Same thing with the veggies. We try and give people notice of like a few days saying like, okay, it's likely that your box will have this, this and this in it, but no complete guarantees. You might find that you're missing one thing and you've got something else instead. And yeah, this model also is really good because it helps share the risk and the reward between the farmers and eaters more. So we ask the people getting these boxes at the start of the season, like if there is like a big natural climate event, like we're hoping that you can still support us, even though we might not be able to produce veggies for you that week. Like this didn't happen to us, thankfully, because it would be, I think, a really stressful experience to go through. But we knew some farmers who got flooded out, but because they're a CSA farm, their members had basically made that commitment at the start of the season that they would keep supporting them, and those farmers would still have an income because this is like something that they can't really do anything about. And then I guess some of the rewards is like, because we sell entirely through this CSA, if we have like a really bumper crop of tomatoes, it just means that everyone will have more tomatoes. And there's kind of like some unexpected abundances that come with this model as well. In essence, it's like you take what you get. People don't really get to choose like, oh, I'd really like some basil this week, or I'd really like some dill next week. Like we kind of just say, look, that's too complicated for us. You'll get what we're growing. And people kind of work around that. Some people are like really happy because they don't like the choice of going into a supermarket and being like, what am I going to cook? Like I have to plan out all these things. And with this way, they can just get their veggie box and then decide what to cook based on that. We really decided to go with CSA rather than trying to go to a market or trying to sell through a store or even trying to sell through a box aggregator, which in Canberra there's one of called Southern Harvest, and basically they get a whole bunch of other local producers to bring their veggies into them, and then they'll pack the boxes with those different producers and send them out directly to households that will eat them. Something I guess about CSA is just that you get the best return on your veggies through it because you are selling direct to households, and like the example of stores or a box aggregator, there's usually some extra markup that they'll have to put on it to make it worth their time. And in the case of markets, we thought about markets for a little bit, and then we were like, oh, we just don't want to give up our weekends. Like, that is a great time to spend with friends, and markets can be fun, but they're not that fun when you have to do them every weekend. So that's kind of why we went with CSA. And then we developed a plan so that every single veggie box of the season was like mapped out, and we would aim to know exactly what's in it. Even if that changes like a little bit, we'd have like a rough idea, or actually a pretty specific idea, but we knew it would change. And yeah, people come and pick up their veggie box once a week from a stall that's just in the driveway of one of our plots. Yeah, so this might be really small to read, but this is basically what our box plan looks like. You can kind of see it might be way too small. It looks colourful maybe from a distance, but yeah, it basically has like the day that we're expecting to harvest everything, and then the name of the vegetable, how much of that vegetable, will it be like 1 leek, or will it be 10 leaves of kale in a bunch, or will it be 2 lettuce in a box? And then we'll estimate a price for that, and we do have 2 different sizes of box. One is a big box, one is a small box. So we'll have the 2 different prices for everything. And then we'll also have the days to maturity next to those vegetables, and then we'll have the sheet has a formula in it so that we know if we want it to be ready by that box date of November 10th, then we need to plant those leek on July 9th. And that kind of feeds into our planting schedule that we have on a different tab. And then, yeah, as the season goes on, we'll write down like what we actually put in the box and what kind of happened different to how we expected, so that we can learn from the next season.
So are the box priced differently each week?
No, so each week the value of the box is, we try to make it the same value. With the CSA there is some flexibility, like yeah, we have a little bit of leeway if some weeks it's a little bit undervalue, and we try and make sure there's some boxes that are a bit overvalue if that happens. But yeah, usually the standard market price would be either $25 for a small box or $45 for a big box. But things get complicated because we use a sliding scale payment system. And so in essence, this is able to work because we ask higher income households to subsidise lower income households. Yeah, I guess some of us in the group grew up not having regular access to fresh food, and like there were a lot of Centrelink surveys done recently of like people in Canberra, often if they're on Centrelink, fresh food is like one of the first things that they're likely to not be able to get. And so yeah, I guess we really wanted to raise some awareness of like this disparity that was happening, as well as like just building trust between people in the community, and not having yeah, I don't know, attitudes develop across differences when we can bring people together and yeah, try and reduce some barriers together. Yeah, in our case, the way that the sliding scale works, we ask all of our members at the start of the season to sign up. This is also an element of the CSA. People sign up for a minimum of 6 weeks and up to the whole season. Some CSAs do it so that you have to sign up for the full season, but because we're like still new growers, we wanted to allow some flexibility and made our minimum time 6 weeks instead. And so along with kind of explaining the CSA for people who've never heard about it before in our membership form, we also explain the sliding scale payment and basically ask a bunch of different questions to assess what kind of payment tier people would be likely to pay in. And yeah, so people give us a lot of information in a really trusting way, and we don't share it with anybody. And we basically talk as a collective and say like, okay, payment tier 1 is probably good for them. We have 5 different tiers, so there's like a total of 10 different prices that you can pay depending on if you get the small box, it could be anywhere between like $15 to $50, and if you get the big box, it could be anywhere between like $25 to $100. And yeah, we basically come back to people after they filled out the form and say, it looks like this would be the most appropriate tier for you, does that feel comfortable? And then yeah, pretty much all of the times they've said yes. If we're ever unsure, we'll say, it looks like you might be this one or you might be that one, and just allow them to choose. Yeah, and yeah, sliding scales is something that I hadn't really come across much before, but the food co-op that I actually was involved with used to have a sliding scale payment for their membership system, and then I heard of another place called Soulfire Farm that also did a sliding scale payment system, and then I heard of like a bakery in Newcastle that was doing it, which was really interesting because I was like, how can you do it in a bakery? Like, it's, anyway, and basically they just had a little system where you would read something and say, okay, if this is my average household income, then I'm like the kookaburra level, and so you would go up to the counter and say, can I get a croissant and a loaf of bread or whatever, and I pay the kookaburra price. And yeah, it was a really cool way to make it easy for people. Yeah, so in terms of how it works with people who share their land with us, we basically provide them with a veggie box every week, and for some households that might be a small box, for some households that might be a big box. It just depends how many people are living there. And we also ask them to pay for the water costs, so it's kind of like they pay maybe $10 for that weekly box because of the water costs. We also ask them if we can farm there for 5 years, because we want to have some assurance that we won't have to leave 1 year in. Yeah, we have like a few people who rent, but most people own the land. But yeah, it's great to have like those little situations that can work out with renters as well. Yeah, we have a minimum space requirement of 70 metres squared. And I guess, yeah, in Canberra, we are farming on Ngunnawal, Ngambri and Narrogoo land. And I guess we were trying to think as a group, like, what does that mean for us, and how do we want to, I guess, acknowledge and engage with this like incredible, like this dispossession of land that the First Nations people have endured for like, yeah, 230 or so years there. And also, how can we recognise that they have so much knowledge of the land? Like, they've been there for 65,000 years plus, and there's so much about the landscape that we don't know and that they do. And yeah, I guess a lot of people say like we should grow native foods, and that's something that we thought about, and we really wanted to make sure that we had like good connections with the local Ngunnawal, Ngambri and Narrogoo people first before even going down that track, because it's kind of like, I guess native foods can be taken away from them and they won't get to see the benefits of, yeah, those being farmed if the income isn't coming to them, or if it's not them being able to directly share their knowledge. So yeah, I guess what we ended up doing was like reaching out to a bunch of different families and asking them like what is important for them, and offering them a free weekly box. And yeah, one of those households has taken up on it, so we give them a box. And then we also, I guess, have just like developed a friendship, like a slow friendship, where we'll turn up to the events that they want a lot of people to come to, and often it's around like deaths in custody, and it's nothing related to agriculture, but it feels important that we're there and that we're, I guess, communicating with other people that are in our circles about it. Yeah. So this is how do we harvest. We try and make it really easy for ourselves and not use a cool room. We were at one point thinking like, oh, do we try and build a cool room on the back of a trailer and have like some kind of refrigeration set up in there? But then we just did our first box with styrofoam boxes and ice packs, and it was all either on the day and the day before, and it worked really well. So we've just continued doing that. It's really easy to find styrofoam boxes around Canberra and ice packs. So we just have them in our freezer. We have a lot of ice packs in our freezer, and we get them out on the day before and set up the boxes and everything. And yeah, in terms of like washing the greens, like leafy greens, washing roots like carrots and beetroots, and doing the drying of garlic. Yeah, like we basically just use a garden hose to wash all of the greens and to like spray off any dirt or bugs that have landed on them. And same thing with roots, we'll just use like a big orange bread crate. I don't know if there are many around here. But yeah, like a crate with mesh, and just spray all of the carrots down, and then also like dunk them in like a bucket of water or a wheelbarrow of water, and then spray them again.
Where do you get your water?
Oh, so the water in Canberra, it's all like town water.
So you
And
take
it's-
it to each place in a truck?
No, it's like connected
So
to the
you-
houses.
Oh, okay, so you're using the water from the properties? Yeah.
Yeah,
And so you pay them for that water?
they pay for that water cost. That's kind of like, the agreement of using their land and giving them a weekly veggie box is they cover the cost of the water,
Okay.
which is less than the value of the veggies that they get, so they're happy to do it. Yeah.
Do the households get the veggie box?
Yes, yes, they get a weekly veggie box in exchange for the cost of the water. Sorry if that wasn't clear earlier. Yeah, and so I guess like doing this method of harvesting, we don't need lots of space to store anything because we just have it in the boxes and then people come and pick it up that day. The only exception for that is, I guess, garlic, where we just have a space that can like, kind of like a room underneath a house that nobody uses, and we can just like store everything in crates there. And it's good. It's like an enclosed space.
How many tonne of garlic do you store under the house?
So I think last year we only grew like 500 bulbs, and then this year we're about to harvest our garlic and it's going to be around 2,000. Yeah.
So that's your scale.
Sorry?
That's your scale, you're scaling up.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Garlic was just something that everybody liked, and we were like, wow, it's really easy to grow a lot of it over the winter months and then still have enough space for all the summer vegetables. So yeah, we decided to grow a lot more.
Can I ask, how many plots are you actually growing in, and how many people are you catering for?
Yes, definitely. Important question. So we grow in 5 different backyards, and the total amount of space that we use would be around 500 metres squared, which includes the pathways in the bed. So it would be a little bit less than that. It would be like 3/4 of that, of the actual growing space. And then last season we supplied for 30 households, and this season we went up to 40 households.
And you have a full-time job as well? This is just a hobby, or does it
No, this is something that I do for around 20 hours a week, and then I have like one other consistent side job where I work at this place called Southern Harvest that gets other local producers to bring in their vegetables. So it's like really interesting to see how they do it and think about if they have any systems that we want to apply to what we're doing. And yeah.
So your co-op, is it profit or not-for-profit organisation?
It is, I'll get into that as well, because that's more complicated than just that, yeah.
And have you got fridge, freezer or something that you actually keep things in? You were talking about ice books.
Yeah, we just have like a household freezer that we freeze all of our ice packs in. But that's the only cooling system that we use, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this is a photo of us cleaning and drying the garlic. There's quite a lot of things when it's like a kind of big job and it's relatively simple that we'll just invite our friends to help with, because it just makes it a way more enjoyable experience. It makes the time go faster. Yeah. Oh yeah, and sometimes, so like probably 90% of what we grow is vegetables, but then maybe even 95%. But then there are times of year when people in Canberra have a fruit tree that they can't keep up with eating the harvest from. So we ask, like, can we pick your fruit and we'll give you some of whatever we make. And so sometimes, we'll get like pears or apples or oranges, lemons, grapefruit, blackberries. Yeah, mushrooms. There's some mushrooms around Canberra that are really good to pick. Yeah. Having a ute really makes this easier. I wouldn't recommend doing it without something, like if your apple lots are probably like, the furthest is probably like 6 kilometres from the other one that's furthest from that. So yeah, having a ute really makes it easy to transport mulch when we need it, or all of those styrofoam boxes when we're harvesting. Yeah, this is like a brief little look at our pickup stall. So we just try and put all of our produce out on like the benches and the tables, and we'll put a sign next to each one saying like, okay, parsley, take 1 bunch, or what's that? Broccoli, take 1 bunch, or spinach, take 1 bunch, or big boxes, take 2 bunches. And that way people can kind of like go around our little pickup stall and choose a little bit what vegetables they're getting. And then we also just get to talk to them and ask them what they've been eating and enjoying the last week, and yeah. So yeah, a normal week for us looks kind of like this. On Mondays, for about 5 hours, we go and plant crops or maintain crops. Tuesday is a relatively easy day. There's only like a little bit of admin that one person needs to do. Usually takes, 2 hours in the afternoon. And that's like, sending the invoices, if there's invoices to send that week, and writing the members' email, which often includes some recipes. And then Wednesday is a pretty standard day where we plant and maintain crops, and we'll do some harvesting. Like at the moment we're harvesting broad beans the day before the box, just because it can take like 2 hours to harvest broad beans, and we'd rather do that the day before. They stay really fresh still. And then Thursday is our like really big harvest day, where we'll harvest everything else for the box, like a lot of salad mix at the moment, carrots, herbs, peas, some garlic very soon. And then we'll be like washing and counting and figuring out how to split all of that all of those vegetables, and then having members come to the pickup store. And so that's like, often like 9 a.m. till 7 p.m, by far our biggest day. And then Friday, usually we don't need to do anything. We, like most of us, are free on a Friday anyway, so if we did need to do something, we could.
What day do you bank your money?
What day do we
Bank your money.
So the way that the invoices work with the sliding scale, some people pay for like 8 boxes at a time, some people pay for the whole season at a time, some people pay for like 2 weeks at a time. I guess it's all just like a bank transfer, so it arrives when they pay it.
So you don't have to do it, they do it for you, sort of?
Yeah, we don't have to go into an actual bank for any of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like together, so that like, with all of us working, we'll probably do 40 hours per week if it's before the box season and we're just getting ready to plant everything. And then that will probably be from like August up until October. And then from November till May, we'll probably be doing 70 combined hours during that box season.
And there's only 5 of you doing.
Yeah, there's 5 of us doing it. So,
Question. So there's 5 of you in the organisation. So are you all getting salary, or how does that all work?
yeah, I don't know if this is on the next slide. So at the moment, we basically, the first year we decided we don't have to pay ourselves because we all had a second job and we were all like really unsure of how much money we were going to make, and we just had the flexibility to say, okay, let's not pay ourselves and let's see what we can actually just do and rely on our second jobs. And then this second season we've started paying ourselves $100 a week, but we could be paying ourselves more than that. We probably could be paying ourselves like $200 or $250 a week. It's just that we also, I don't know, like we're not completely dependent on it as our livelihood, and we kind of just want to like let it go gradually and slowly and not do anything drastic too fast. Yeah.
So are the gardens like irrigated? Because you're you're only there not every day,
Yes.
how are you watering them?
Yeah, all of the plots have irrigation set up on them, and because it's been really rainy, we haven't really needed to water for the last couple of months. But yeah, when it's a hot summer or even a hot week, we'll have the irrigation come on.
Yeah. So just
And it's-
on timers.
Yeah, it's just on timers, and it's all just the drip irrigation. Yeah.
You talk about the pre-box season, so this doesn't work for 52 weeks of the year basically, you just do like spring and summer growing things, do you?
That's right, yeah. Because it frosts in Canberra, you can grow over winter, but you can't grow that much, and whatever you do grow will just take twice as long. And so, yeah, we thought we would just focus on doing the spring, summer. Okay. So yeah, how we split the work, we make sure that all of us do the really core work of planting, maintaining, harvesting, and we also have volunteers that come and help with that when they feel like it. And then for this last season, Christina has taken on just raising all of the seedlings, and Mikey's taken on doing a lot of the composting. And I might actually go into composting now because I thought I would have gone into it already. But yeah, so in terms of composting, we had those earlier issues using other people's compost, and so we were like, oh, it would be really good to just have enough of our own compost. And so we basically have a bin out the front of our house where people on the street can bring their compost. We probably have 10 to 15 people bringing their household compost to that each week. And then we also pick up a wheelie bin from the food co-op of food scraps. So yeah, we have quite a bit. And then there are a lot of people on our street that seem to have too many leaves on there, and they're like, oh, I've got to take these leaves to the green waste place. And we're like, you can bring them to us. And so we have a really big area where we just try and get people to bring their leaves.
So in terms of people bringing their own household waste to that bin, do you have certain things that can go in that bin? Do you have a label that says this is for green waste, not for meat or citrus? Is there rules around that?
Yeah, we don't have any rules of what can go. We just say food scraps, and then people will put citrus and food, meat or other things in there. We ask for leaves and green waste to go in a different location. But yeah, in terms of those, so we just compost all of that. Our compost gets really hot because we're adding so much mass to it every few days. So yeah, it's probably around 65 most of the time, and we have to make sure that we balance things well and turn it enough so that it doesn't get too hot. Yeah.
Where do you keep your compost?
We just have it at the front of our house. Yeah. So it's very visible from the street, and people who walk up the mountain next to us are like, oh, interesting. And sometimes they're like, are we bringing shame to the rest of the neighbourhood with our gross compost? But it's really well contained, and we make sure there's always enough carbon. So yeah, it's there. Yeah.
When you had that compost that commercially, when you bought compost and it was contaminated with herbicide, how did you find out?
We were struck. We were like, what is happening to our tomatoes? And they were doing this really particular curling up thing, and we asked a bunch of different people who knew a lot more about plant health than we did to come and look at them, and they were like, this is not normal. It is not this plant is not getting enough water or too much water or whatever. And then they said you should do a reverse Google image search, take a photo of the plant and then put it into Google and see, if you do the search by image, see what comes up that is similar to that image. And the things that would come up were these tomatoes that were affected by this 2,4-D herbicide contamination. Yeah. And we did send some of that soil off to do a test, but I think that the freezer brick that was with it would have thawed by the time that it got there, and so it didn't actually come up with much in the test. But that was just the photo that really looked the closest out of everything. Yeah.
How do you control the pesticide that might be coming in the green waste that you use on composting?
Yeah. On our scale, we're not too worried. I think this compost producer like ended up having herbicide contamination because the only like farms around them are using that herbicide, and yeah, that's where they need to get huge amounts of green waste to make their compost. Whereas in our scale, it's just like dried leaves from people's like trees in front of their houses, and we're not worried in the same way about people spraying. Yeah, but there could be something, but yeah.
When you bought that commercial compost, did you notify the manufacturer of that the product was causing you problems?
We did, yeah. They were unfortunately really unreceptive. They offered us a 10% discount for our next order, and we were like, no thanks. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, composting, Mikey does a lot of the composting. We have a volunteer bookkeeper. We use this software called Zoho, which is like you can get a free 1-year trial, and then we found out after the trial expired, like the free version is actually just really good to use, so we stuck with it. Yeah, it's often me that does like communication with the members and writing up recipes, but I'm also training Kim to do it. So yeah, it's nice to just be able to like share the work out between us a bit more. And yeah, usually I'm the one creating the work plan. I guess here I am on Norfolk Island, so I'm not doing it this week, and everyone's surviving without me.
You're a good teacher.
Thank you. And then for really big decisions that affect the business, like things like how much do we pay ourselves, what direction do we want our business to go in, are we going to change a system, like how we harvest, for like all of those things we will talk about with each other and we'll have consensus with. So yeah, if one person disagrees, we'll say, okay, maybe we're not ready to make that decision yet. Do we need to get some more information? Do we need to understand like what emotions are going on in the situation? And yeah. And we basically, when we're working together, like we're often like in a backyard weeding something together or harvesting something together, or we'll like, yeah, so we'll have a lot of time to talk then. But if it's like a really big decision, we're like, okay, let's sit down and have some lunch with this decision. So yeah, it kind of just fits into the time that we're working already.
Question, have you applied for government funding?
Yeah, so there've been like a few grants that we've applied for. Is it a few? Maybe it's just one grant. I think we applied for one grant, but we didn't get it because we weren't like easily seen as a not-for-profit business. They really wanted to give it to like a community garden, and we didn't really fit the mould well enough. And then in terms of other government funding, there are some grants that we know about that we think we could apply for and do better in. Yeah, but that seems to be like the only government funding stream that's available to us. We don't know how to do it if it's not a grant. Yeah.
Where do you get your seeds from? Do you pay for them, and does it come out of the business? I mean, initially you must have had to decide to pay for them yourself, or?
Yeah, so we got like a bunch of seeds through the Canberra Seed Savers who just gave them to us because they really liked what we were doing and I guess had enough spare seeds. And we've also been saving a few seeds and using those ourselves. And the first year, I think we would have bought some other things that like neither us or the Seed Savers could provide. I think we would have spent like maybe $500 on seeds altogether. And then like in these following years, we're just like spending less and less because we're able to save more and more.
So does that mean you're letting things go to seed so that you can, some things go to seed so you can harvest?
Yeah, like we'll get seeds from tomatoes, beans, peas, carrots, onions, yeah, leeks, the garlic, I guess, yeah. Yeah, like silver beet, beetroot, yeah. Like most things except for the brassicas, yeah, just because brassicas like will often have more than one type growing in a particular plot, and it'll just cross-pollinate way too easily. If we have like zucchinis at one plot and cucumbers at another plot, we'll try and save seeds from them as well. Yeah. So yeah, I guess I'm kind of trying to summarize at this point. So the things that feel like a success for us is that we basically have lots of support within the communities. There have been so many people who have offered us land and like more than we can use. There's a lot of people who are on our member waiting list to sign up for a veggie box. We've had like at least like 3 or 4 articles written about us, and like people just contact us to volunteer even though we don't know them personally at all. I guess it feels like a success to go from 30 to 40 households each week for our second season. The fact that our team has fun together also feels like a big success. I just felt like I had to put this photo in here, but there's one here of these parrots on the bottom right, and it's just something that we do that like we just had spare time when we were setting up for a stall one week, so we made a parrot out of tomatoes. And we have like really good member retention rates, so the people who signed up for the first year have still signed up for the second year, even for the people with higher incomes, which is just like such an amazing act of generosity and like belief in us. So yeah, it's amazing. And we also get to eat our own food. So that's great. The things that like are our biggest challenges, I guess, like going back to your question about how much we can pay ourselves, like if we did decide to pay ourselves like an hourly rate, it would be really low. It would be like $11 an hour. And so, yeah, I think it is really important to acknowledge that like we aren't ready to do this as like our sole livelihood at the moment, and we've got a way to go for that. As well as like, yeah, I guess I'm just like really trying to read and explore like how are farmers doing it? Like if you're not using heavy machinery and you're not like exploiting labour, then like how are you making it work? And it's not always easy to find the answers for that.
Quick question. Do you do eggs too or not?
No, it's all veggies. Yeah.
Have you thought about doing eggs or?
I guess it is like a little random idea in the back of my mind, but yeah, I haven't seriously considered it. Sorry, was that a question? Okay.
Do you buy fertiliser?
No, we don't buy fertiliser.
So you don't even buy on the mulch, do you?
Yeah, like having the compost is really good. Like if we need to feed plants a bit more, we'll use some worm juice or a compost tea. And yeah, they're both just really easy to get. We can make them ourselves. Yeah.
And you guys have this worm farm? Like is this your worm farm that you get this juice from?
Yeah, it's just like a multi-layer worm farm, and you put some scraps in there and you turn the tap on like once a week. And
your veggies are really big and healthy?
Yeah, I think they're doing really well. Yeah. Yeah. So that challenge I mentioned earlier of having it hard to find good compost is definitely something in Canberra. And then also just like, because our plots are spread out, it means that we try not to go to all 5 plots in one day. We'll try to go to 2 plots in one day and then go to the other 2 the next day or 2. But I guess that's just like a logistical thing that we have to think about and plan around. Yeah, and so these are some of our ideas or experiments for the future, which is like, making a lot more compost and selling it. There's just so many waste streams in Canberra where people are just throwing out food scraps and like they can go into the landfill bin, and it's just like, sad to see it happening. And we're just like, okay, I guess we're figuring out like what is the space that we can use to set up a bigger compost production and then like how can we perfect our recipe with our compost to make sure it's good enough to sell to other people. We've also been experimenting this season with like just growing extra seedlings, more than we would need for our season, and just selling them to people. And then I guess the last idea that we've had is providing some consulting for people who want to grow more in their own backyard. Yeah.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah.
Sorry.
And that's the end of my presentation. So, yeah.
So if you don't go every day to every plot, who does watering and seeding? How do you manage watering the seedlings and things that you put in?
Yeah,
You've got them on drip or
we've set up drip irrigation, and we can basically just text the people who live at each plot and say, oh, it's raining, so make sure the water doesn't come on. Or, oh, it's been like hot for a few days in a row now, do you mind turning it on? Yeah.
And the people that live at the houses are the security.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.